Time for feedback for our session number 9, coordinate 569713. I'm just going to play the feedback and then I'll replay it with everyone's notes and drawings built into the video. I'm not going to say anything during the first part of the video just so you can absorb it, because the theory is that you're sending this imagery back to yourself in the past when you did your remote viewing session. Right, in these notes you look at the image on the upper left and it kind of reminds me of the ball before it's inflated, and the words on the right say sentient, biological, soft, activity, motion, flowing. Definitely the sentient and biological has to do with the little boy inside the bubble, and the motion and the flowing do relate to the rest of the scene. And if we look below, we see the words water, enclosing, surrounding, fluid. And then at the very bottom on the left, you see whole or empty space. And I really love that, because when you're inside one of these things, in a way, it's a three-dimensional whole and it is an empty space inside. So I thought this was interesting. On the right side of these notes, you see the words suspension, bridge, and dam. And that's under, they marked it AOL, that's analytical overlay. So this is when the ego is trying to put meaning to what's coming through, but it is referential to water, which is great. And if you look at the drawing itself, it looks like water with a structure next to it, like a boxy structure with water in front of it. So that kind of relates to this water environment that you see here, the blue water. In these notes we read sweeping, man-made, vast, spacious, concave, solid, and firm. And definitely the pool itself is concave. It's firm, spacious, definitely man-made, so got some hits there. This is a really great one. So it says container, bowl-like, enclosed under covering, steel, silver colors, and that bubble does have a silver reflective surface. Sounds of creaking, metallic noise. There was definitely that creaky sound of the bubble moving around. Yellows, plastics, artificial materials. So we see that it is made out of plastic. And of course the drawing itself is really, really great. Like a bowl with a clear dome covering, vast and spacious and circular. It even says gel-like or clear, spheres like bubbles, water substances like ink. And that water, because of the blue plastic underneath it, does have an inky quality to it. So this one was really spot on. This one is really great too. It says dome-shaped on supports like textured old wood, something to the left, activity. And on the left side of the pool, the parents of these children are standing there taking photographs and cheering them on. And so if you look at the drawing, you see someone inside of this dome-like thing and then people to the side. So this is really accurate. The dome encloses something, surrounds it, maybe a statue on a platform. And it's really referring to the kid inside the bubble. A lot of heavy structural support, and as you see in the video, there is a metal railing around it. Very spacious, like an echoed vault. And I haven't been inside of one of these things, but imagine the sound inside is very echoey. These notes say something preserved in a gel or Perspex glass protection. So again, that quality of plastic or gel, very reminiscent of the image here. This place makes people come together, work together, took many people with the same focus, something connected to constellations, time on a cycle loop repeating. So this is at a fun park, and a lot of people did come together to put this together. It is a place where people come together to have fun. But I want to point out something here. It says something connected to constellations, because this will come up later with other people's notes. So I just want to note it here, the constellation reference. In these notes, we see the words circular movement, and then the image of circular things in relation to each other, and the words rotating up and over each other. And I think that's referencing the two children in their own separate bubbles. And in the upper right hand, I enlarged it. It says ego. That's how I train some people for analytical overlay. It's just called ego stuff. And she writes the word Elitch's. And if you're from outside of Colorado, Elitch Gardens or Elitch's is a fun park in Denver. And so somehow this person was picking up the idea of a fun park, and their ego just translated it into Elitch's. And in a way, it's great because sometimes analytical overlay does accurately point to what's going on. So she was perceiving that this was a fun park. In these notes, we see the word movement twice and movement directionally. So it's lacking that circular quality, but still there is very much a sense of movement throughout this whole thing. And even the square shape in the middle does relate to the square shape of the pool. This one's great because it's just raw data. So maybe these were like waves or just wavy lines that they put down. And when I see this, I think, yep, that's a good hit for the reference to water. This one's another reference to a square shape. It says structure, heavy, solid, old, angular. And of course the pool itself is square or rectangular and very solid and heavy. Here's another case of analytical overlays, sometimes containing accurate information. So we see the words inside domed, Capitol building, which has that reminiscent shape of a dome or round shape, domed ceiling, observatory, telescope. So if you know those observatories on top, they have a very round shape, light and airy. So definitely it's very light and airy inside those things and in the environment overall. So here the analytical overlay was pointing very well to the situation. I like this one because it includes the bubble, but it also really shows the chairs and the railing on either side. So this was another good hit. Some notes here: glass dome shape, covering, protecting, circular, fenced in. So they nailed it, that this whole area was fenced in. Elevated foundations and beams, so we see that the walls of the pool are elevated. I really like this note, feeling like the floor isn't there or that it's going to drop. So this is an experiential thing that they picked up. So we see the kid dropping into the pool, so there's a sense of falling or dropping. But even when the children are floating, there is a sense of that the floor isn't quite there, it's not solid. So somehow this person's mind was picking up that quality. So in these notes, we can refer back to earlier where the person had noted, I think it was constellation or something like that, because it comes up again here with the words space or galaxy, and the drawing on the lower left corner is reminiscent of Saturn or planets going around the sun. But I think it's still connecting to this sense of roundness and of the bubbles, so like they're little planets. And then the upper right hand corner, it says liquidy or fluid. So again, it's a good hit there with the water. I almost missed these notes because I saw them and I said, oh, it looks like the inside of a box or the corner of a wall. But then we see on the right hand side, it's more specific because it does touch on the corners of the pool, but then that round shape in the center of it does look just like that bubble. So I think this is another hit. I like this one. It reminds me of, I think it's the logo for the Monroe Institute. It's reminiscent of that shape. So we have a circular shape with an arrow indicating movement. I think that's what that would symbolize. So I think this was great. And another drawing here of circles within circles. Again, we can think of the solar system. But also what comes up often in remote viewing or other types of clairvoyance is sometimes shapes are embedded within each other, even though in reality they're separate. So we have two separate bubbles or spheres, but the mind will sometimes put one inside of the other, especially when it's about a pattern or concentricity. This viewer sent our notes via email, and they have here with their first ideogram deception or two-ness of something, which I think is great because we have two bubbles here. Biological, so this is involving people. Then drop, or a sudden steep descent, a large dramatic shift in dimension or consciousness. That idea of drop or descent came up earlier as the kid was being dropped into the pool. But certainly I imagine being inside of these bubbles is a dramatic shift in your consciousness or your awareness, or shift in dimensionality. So you're experiencing things in a 360-degree viewpoint. In these notes, the viewer's mind seems to extend beyond the pool because we see exterior can see surroundings, land, hot, sunny, broad view, horizontal shapes. And it was very hot that day, sunny, can see really far, and dark greens and browns in the distance. So look behind here in the bubbles. You see the house to the left, that wooden roof, and the trees in the background. And then in her notes on the bottom right hand corner there, it says mountains, like I feel them but I can't see them. And indeed, this fun park does have mountains surrounding it. So this was a nice one. Then more of her notes. It says curved glass, light colors, curves, very modern. So she was picking up on the curved quality of the spheres. And you know, it's funny, the very modern thing, because if you think of modern furniture, even back from the 50s, what was considered modern back then for furniture, some of it was very round and very clear plastic, so space-like, futuristic. Then the end of her notes, it says motion, energy, and space and air. So the bubbles are very spacious. They have the quality of air inside of them. Then the smooth energy of combining, I'm not quite sure what that's about, but moving people along on a motorized walkway. So it's, if you think of a hamster on a wheel walking around, these kids are trying to do that. They're trying to walk, not doing a very good job of it, but having an awful lot of fun. But it does have somehow that quality of being transported to it. Another viewer sent in some drawings, and what I like about these drawings, just as a side note, is they're very artistic. I wonder if this person's a graphic artist or a sketch artist. This is really nice. But so we see here on the left, trees, road, walkway, sunny, and that does describe the surroundings, small clouds. You can even see clouds in the background here. Wooden brown color and texture, so we look at the roofs, so the surrounding houses. And you see where it says indoor bicycle race road on the right hand side there. There was an actual go-kart track just several hundred feet away, and it did have that quality, that circular shape. And we see an ice cream cone, and I'm pretty sure there was ice cream somewhere in that fun park. This viewer also drew the shape and then wrote down pipe and tunnel. And what I want to say here is the word pipe and tunnel is analytical overlay or ego stuff. So their conscious mind is trying to translate this perception or this image, and they're defining it as a pipe or a tunnel. So there's a difference. There's the raw information and then how we interpret it. And I think this is another hit because these bubbles do have that quality of being hollow on the inside, the way a pipe or a tunnel is. Their second drawing is another example of the raw perception versus the analytical overlay. So they have this drawing, and then the word chandelier. And if we think of a chandelier, it's like a soft boundary with a hollow interior where the light bulbs are, or where the electricity comes in. But it does have that hollow shape to it, just like the bubbles. And a third example from this viewer, they have this drawing here, and then their analytical overlay was window with a question mark, which is interesting because windows have that clarity, that transparency, which these bubbles have, and then this picture does capture the roundness of the bubble. This note is interesting because it captures the experience of the child inside, or the inside of the bubble as it's being filled with air. So it says, I'm getting a feel of opening or exploding outward movement from a point. And that's exactly what's happening with the bubble being inflated. So like the earlier pictures of the chandelier and the window, we have an image here and then perceptions that are being defined by the ego as analytical overlay. So there's the picture and then the words lantern, jar with lid, glass and metal. So these words are all reminiscent of a container, which these bubbles are. And this drawing, it's interesting because this was from the same person who we just saw their notes, and they wrote that about the moving outward, the exploding, the inflating. I don't remember the exact words. And this can describe the force of the air being put into the bubble and expanding the bubble outward. But what's interesting to me is that this drawing is actually reminiscent of a chandelier that I've seen in different hardware stores. It's a very avant-garde or very stylish type of chandelier. You can find it at places like IKEA. And we just had another remote viewer just a few frames ago draw and label their drawing chandelier. So it's like the chandelier thing is coming up a lot. In this drawing we see something like an egg cracked in half, but I think this is reminiscent of these bubbles because if you look at this picture, the bubble has a black seam on it, and that's where the zipper is, where the person enters the bubble before it gets inflated. So somehow this image is picking up on the fact that there's a split somewhere inside the bubble. This one's a little tough to see, but we see the word spinning and then some image on top of it, and I can't really, it's like my conscious mind can't even wrap itself around this drawing, but somehow I can feel some sort of visceral connection to what's going on in the feedback. This one's interesting because when I first saw this drawing, I thought, I'm not sure if this is really connecting with anything, but then I noticed when I did a close-up of one of these bubbles that the seams on it come from a central point, and then like that, it really does connect to the feedback, at least for me. It might be a stretch, but I think it's important that the mind works in ways that sometimes are not very obvious to the conscious mind. I want to thank you all for participating. This was a really fun one to do for you, and I'm always surprised and inspired by the work that you do. So one other note is I have a big remote viewing event happening next year in the spring that you might want to be aware of. If you'd like to be on my mailing list to learn about it when I release the information, just send me an email to mindpossibletraining@gmail.com and let me know that you'd like to be added to that list, and that way you'll be well informed. So other than that, thanks, and I'll post the next target in a few weeks. All right, take care. Bye-bye.